Hey guys, Savageredrecovery back for another video. How are my savages doing? If you guys aren't subscribed, do me a favor. If you want to support the channel, subscribe, hit the bell, get all my notifications. Hit a like, comment, share, help me out with the algorithm. If you guys aren't following me on Instagram, you can find me at savage_red_studios, where you can see all of my photography. And also I have a Facebook page and a Twitter. And you guys can check me out on Patreon. You guys can also check me out on the Cash App. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, so this right here is a good story about paternity laws and being a father and paying for children that have nothing to do with you. And this isn't just bad men making bad decisions. This affects all men of all walks of life. And this story goes to show you. Now, this is a story from a few years ago, and this is in Michigan, but let's get into it.
Let her get the man she laid down with to pay for him. He goes free. I never even slept with her.
It's happening to men across Michigan. They are being forced to pay child support as dads by default.
Now, this doesn't affect women in any way. This is specifically rules and laws that affect only men.
Matter if the men can prove the children are not theirs, Michigan law makes them pay anyway.
But tonight, 7 Action News reporter Kim Russell tells us that may be about to change.
Most people think you either have to adopt or conceive a baby to become legally responsible for a child. Under Michigan law, that is simply not how it works.
I was the father by default.
These four men came to the 7 Action News studios to raise awareness. You could.
So these are four men, all right? One's white, three are black. So it's going cross race.
Become dad by default. There are a couple ways it happens. Pastor Edward Mack says his previous wife had 3 children. He loved them as his own. Then he realized 2 of them were not biologically his.
You must have been so heartbroken.
Damn, it was a hurting thing. I don't even really want to talk about it because it brings tears to my eyes. Sorry for getting teary-eyed.
Pastor Mack says the betrayal led to divorce.
So he's a pastor and he's married. So he's allegedly a man of God. I'm not saying he is or he isn't, but the fact of it is that he's a pastor and he goes to church and he's married. He's doing what you would expect a man of the cloth or a Christian or a godly man to be doing. He'd be married, he'd be having children. He would be doing the things that he should be doing. But he's with a woman who he's married to, she has 3 children, and he raises all 3 children as his own because he thought they were his.
He was shocked when the judge told him because he was married, he became dad by default. He had to pay support for another man's children.
Let her pay for him. Let her get the man she laid down with to pay for him. He goes free. I never even slept with her.
So, as you can tell, if you're married, if you're a man and you're married to a woman, and any children that are conceived during that marriage are your children. That's how the state looks at it. They are yours because you are married. You become the dad by default. So that goes to show you, ladies, that marriage for men is even more risky, because if a woman cheats, which the statistics show that men and women cheat at the same rates, the difference is men don't get pregnant. So women aren't going to get stuck with a child that's not theirs or supporting a child that's not theirs. But this woman cheated on her husband and had 2 children, not 1, but 2 children with another man. 2. And he has to deal with the betrayal, and then he has to pay the woman who cheated on him. And then he got divorced and probably had to give up his stuff. Tell me, ladies, how that is a fair deal.
I got a lawsuit when I was young, and she basically just said, that's the money I'm going to get, and she got it.
Reginald Whitlow, Anthony Sims, and Carnell Alexander.
The white guy, he never even had sex with the woman. She just stated that he was the father.
Have similar stories. They say women named them out of nowhere. In 2014, 7 Action News told Carnell's story and found the mother. She said she was told in order to get welfare benefits, she needed to name a father. She knew he wasn't the dad, but wrote down his name anyway.
Everything is my fault that I put him through.
Do you think that he should have to pay this money?
No, he shouldn't have to pay it at all.
Then these men missed paternity hearings.
So let's just think about this. So she named him so she could benefit from welfare, knowing that he wasn't the father. He's had to pay child support. So when she gets the child support checks, do you think she gives them to him? She sends it back to the state? No, she cashes them. And the fact that she committed paternity fraud and received money from a man that she knew, like, she didn't not know that that wasn't his kid. She knew that it wasn't his kid. And the news agency, they're protecting her identity. So people protect the woman who committed a crime or lied to because technically lying on a government form, like, child support is a government agency, it's a state agency. So when she named him as the father and lied, that is falsely filling out a government document. And that she's not being charged with that. The state didn't care that she lied. They just want this man to pay. And then the news decided to protect her identity.
Because they were either sick or did not receive notice. Carnell had proof. He was in prison when a process server claimed he was served at a house in Highland Park. When they didn't show up at court, a judge ruled to them dads by default. They then missed their chance to challenge it with DNA evidence by the court deadline because they couldn't find the women and children.
They wouldn't give me her address because it was confidential.
These men all eventually...
So a woman says, hey, you're the dad. And then the government, the state won't help him get in contact with her to get a DNA test. Again, they protect the woman. But allegedly, this is his daughter or his son. So allegedly, he's responsible for this child, but they're protecting her so he can't find them. Think about that. Think about being told this is your kid, but then also at the same time, the people that are coming after you telling you that, well, even though that's your kid, we're not going to let you know where they're at because it's their privacy. On top of that, the guy who was in prison, the person that served the paperwork lied to get paid while he was in prison. And it's 100% a proven fact that he was in prison. It's documented. That's the other fun fact. The state has the prisons. So with him being in state custody, the other part of the state was going after him, and that doesn't matter. He's still in the wrong and still obligated to pay.
Actually got DNA tests backing their stories. Too late.
Oftentimes it doesn't make a difference.
Representative Jim Runstead says those DNA tests should make a difference. The Republican from White Lake says he heard the story of Carnell Alexander on 7 Action News and decided to take action. He says this year he hopes to pass legislation that would protect men from being forced to pay for another man's children. Plus, women and process servers who lie should face stiff legal.
Paternity fraud, the crime would only be 18 months. That's not even that stiff of a punishment. Not even that stiff of a punishment. And the fact of the matter of it is I'm sure this man's been locked up. Like, that's the thing. Once you get into the system, it is hard to get out of the system.
Legal consequences.
This was wrong. Deceiving and lying and obligating people who are not supposed to be obligated to pay bills is wrong.
These men don't just want the law changed to protect others. They want compensation.
I'm getting garnished. I'm getting thrown in jail. I'm getting felony charges.
You have taken our lives. Change that law.
Representative Runstead says he has written 5 draft bills that aim to prevent such fraud, protecting both men and children. He says he plans to introduce them within the next month. Kim Russell.
And the fun fact is, I guarantee you there's some feminine groups that are actually going to fight against this. But a fun fact about this is the man that never even had slept with the woman, the white guy, he's been locked up and had felony charges against him for not paying. Like, that's the other thing. I'll give you guys a great example. When I went into child support court for my son, this is how this worked. So I went and applied at CPS I went and opened a case on myself for child support because I wanted to get custody of my son or get rights to my son. So I went and opened a case on myself and took a DNA test. The DNA, they had her come take the DNA test. So I had to, that established my paternity to my son. I opened the case. So then when we went to court, I ended up only getting in custody 10 hours a week with my kid after paying a lot of money to get that. Then child support came. When child support came, I went in there, you go in and you give them your paycheck stub. And when you give them your paycheck stub, they do a calculation and then they tell you, they don't tell you what you're going to pay. They tell you they'll send you the paperwork. So 30 days later, or 28 days later, I got a paper in the mail saying that I owed X amount of dollars every month. I got the paper on March 30th or March 31st, something like that. It said active April 1st, you are going to be paying X amount of dollars. If you just want to dispute this, you have 30 days to dispute the order. So what ended up happening is I was making $17 an hour at the time. This was 4 or 5 years ago. It was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. I had only been in the electrical trade for a couple of years. I had my son when I was 2 years sober. So I turned 2 years sober. He was born 5 days later. So when I went to child support, it was the following year. So I'd only been in the trade for about 2-3 years at the time. I was making $17 an hour. So that means I was making like $34,000 a year roughly. So when I went in there, my last paycheck stub had overtime on it. I had like 8 hours of overtime, maybe 10 hours of overtime or something. The lady asked me if I got overtime a lot. I said, no, it's never guaranteed. I might get it, I might not. She goes, okay. So she took the number on my paycheck and took that number that I made that week and times it by 52. And then she put that number into the system. What that did is that said, instead of me making $34,000 a year, I was making like $45,000 or $47,000. I was making almost $50K a year on hours that I wasn't working. So when they did that, so let's say I think it was like $45,000 a year. So child support said, okay, so you make $45,000. We're gonna make sure you pay your kid's mom 10% of that. So I had to pay an order of like $470 or $450 to the mom directly. The lady also said, hey, your job offers health insurance. You're gonna have to put your son on your health insurance. Well, in order for my son to be on my health insurance, it was $104, $112 a week to the insurance company just for them to cover me and my son. Now, the way that the policy is if I was a single person, my deductible would have been $2,200. After I paid $2,200, the insurance company would cover everything 100%. Well, when you go to a family plan, which is what I had to be on because my son was on my policy, the deductible went to $5,500. So if you take $5,500 and divide it by 12, it comes out to be $400 and some a month. So with that being said, I was paying my son's mom like $450. I was paying like $460 or $412 or something to the insurance company for my son to be on my insurance. And then I was paying about $400 some a month for a deductible. Because what you have to realize is until the deductible was covered, I had to pay for everything out of pocket. Now, granted, my son might not have to go to the doctor in March, but he might have to go to the doctor twice in June. So I'd have to pay for all of that. So if you averaged out the money, it's about $400 a month. So I was paying, if you take the deductible and add it to what I paid the insurance and add it to what I was paying his mom, it's about $1,300 a month. Now, if you do $1,300 a month times 12, it comes out to about $17,000. So I was only making $34,000 before I paid taxes. In child support and health insurance, I was paying $16,000. So if you notice, that puts me at about $18,000, 18 to it's about $18,000, $17,000 out of my income. And then you have to take out my taxes, which my taxes were probably, $5,000, $6,000, $4,000. So effectively, I was only making like $800 to $1,000 a month. All right. Now, because I paid the attorneys for custody, I then had to pay another attorney to get my child support ordered, because in order for me to dispute it, I had to pay an attorney to go file the paperwork and deal with the courts. I did not know enough to do it myself. So the attorney was $1,000. So the attorney was $1,000. Then I was paying $1,300 a month. My attorney said you'll get a hearing in 2 to 3 weeks. With the 2 to 3 weeks turned into 6 months because the family court didn't put my court hearing until like 6 months out. So I asked, do I have to keep paying this order while I'm waiting to go to court? And they said yes. So for 6 months, I paid $1,300 a month, effectively. Some months I didn't have to pay for his health insurance. Some months I did. So after all this is said and done, my child support gets lowered because they realized that my health insurance, without me paying the deductibles, I was already paying 5% of my income just to the insurance company. And the law states that if you pay 5% or more in health insurance, then they can rule that your health insurance is unaffordable, and then they just charge you to be on Medicare. So my son was on Medicare, and I was paying like $89 or $90 or $100 a month in order for him to be on it. So I end up getting the new order. My child support gets lowered to about $400 or $450 a month or roughly something like that. So I had 2 child support orders. I had one child support order that said that I was paid, and another child support order that said, which was the new one, that said I wasn't paid. Whenever they do a child support order, they backdate it to the first order. So they were supposed to take my payments from my old case and put them on my new case to show that the new case had been being paid. Well, they didn't do that. So my new order, when they gave me the order, it backdated to April 1st. So I was like 6, 7, 8 months behind in child support payments, according to the state, because they didn't add the payments over. So immediately I got the IRS telling me that my tax returns were being taken because I owed child support. I had the state telling me they were taking my license because my child support wasn't paid. And then they also added the debt to they also added my debt to my credit report, so it hurt my credit. Now, my payments were up to date. The issue had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the state not doing their job. To this day, I still have child support on my credit score. It's at a total of 0, but when you look, you can still see that it's on my credit. So it looks like at some point I didn't pay my child support. Now, with that being said, during that time period, I was having trouble paying my bills. I was struggling, like it was rough. And that is something that I didn't do. Like, I went to child support to get custody of my kid, to take care of my kid. My son's mom said in court when we were during custody that I paid for everything my son needed. Like, in every sense of the word, I was not a deadbeat dad. Like, I was not a guy that wasn't responsible for the child that he was part of. Like, I was responsible. But the family court system still ended up screwing me over. it screwed me over to the point where I ended up losing my apartment because I had a roommate, and my roommate relapsed and stopped paying his bills and moved out, and I was paying about $800 to $900 a month on an apartment that I could afford when the two of us lived there, but I could not afford it with the child support and also with me being there by myself. I ended up having to move in with my mom for about 3 weeks. And I moved in with my mom for 3 weeks and then moved to where I currently live and lived in an attic paying $300 a month to be able to have a place to stay. And all of this stuff comes down to the court system. I even as of right now, I'm overpaid on my child support. My child support is ahead. It takes the system super long for them to fix anything that has to do with you. I had been overpaying for months. I had went to the union and got health insurance because I switched to being a union guy instead of a non-union guy. So I had been paying for like $90 to $100 for months. All sorts of stuff. I ended up being ahead $500 or $600 or $700. And when you pay child support, they take a management fee of like 2 or 3%. When I ended up being hundreds of dollars over, they then took a $300 or $400 administrative fee, even though I had been paying I've already been paying those fees the whole time. So, long story short, I'm like $200, $300, $400 over right now, but that's money that I won't get back. They just tuck it, and the system is just set up to hurt men. So women, if you have brothers, fathers, sons, nephews, cousins, understand that the system is geared against them. So when you hear men talking about the laws need to be changed, this is a great example of why. And it might benefit you ladies now, but if you end up having sons, then this thing that is benefiting you, you're selling out your sons for benefits of your life now. And that's not fair to your children. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments. Email me if you guys want. If you guys have any topics you want me to touch. But as always, guys, stay savage.